Could you tell me a little bit about your life when you were growing up, and um, how did acting start to play a role in your life, or when did acting start to play a role in your life?
Well, gosh, I have an older sister and an older brother, and they sort of started into acting when I was 8 years old. My dad moved us from suburbia to this farm in the middle of nowhere in this house that was, I mean, it was in such bad condition. The farmer who sold us the 52 acres on which it sat was throwing the house for free. So that tells you what kind of shape it in. Everybody figured they'd just tear it down, but my dad wanted to fix it up. Anyway, I guess I started doing, theater and puppet shows and, shows at the town hall or in school or at the church because it got me out of work around the farm, to be honest. And it was just, it was a respite from the kind of, we were way out in the middle of nowhere, just three or four houses within walking distance. And, so it was probably out of self-preservation.
And you talked about in your book about your father. I'm sure a lot of people can relate. He would just take on projects within the house all the time. So they were something was always going on.
Yeah, he had a full-time job with Firestone Rubber Company as an architect, but I don't know how he did it. All of his spare time, on weekends was digging in the basement or tearing down a wall or putting up drywall or fixing the plumbing. I mean, I really, now that I'm grown up and I have my own houses that I fix up, I just don't know how he did it with a full-time job, but there was always some usually tedious job to be done.
Through his whole life?
Yeah, actually, gosh, to be honest, the house never even got finished in his lifetime. When he passed and my mom ended up selling the farm because it was just too much for her, there was still work to be done. And in fact, the man who bought it sort of undid everything my dad had spent 25 or 30 years doing and, made it his own home, which I can't fault him for, but, it was hard to see, like, that was my childhood, plastered onto the walls and cemented into the basement. So it was, it's just one of those things that you learn as you get older in life that, nothing is permanent.
Yeah, absolutely. You went into to escape into acting when you were younger. When did you realize that you had a skill for it or a knack for it?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I've realized that yet. But the other thing I did was sports. That was another thing that was a legitimate thing that my parents would let us do. So my brothers and I were in sports year round and did plays whenever we could. So I knew I really liked it. And I went to college. Of course, I went to a different level of training in it and then really started to get fit. But even at that, I was going to go work in advertising because that was something I thought I could write and, maybe get in advertising and get to New York and then I'd start auditioning. It's kind of that's how naive I was as a little farm boy. But I think instead I couldn't get a job in advertising. So I went to Chicago and tried to get into Second City and improv and all that stuff, which just really excited me. And it was there, I think, that I learned that, wow, there is a lot to this. This is a much deeper well of an art form than I had even imagined. But it spurred me on rather than frustrated me. And I knew that what I liked about it was that I knew that no matter how good I got, I could always get better. And I liked that aspect. In school had come fairly easy to me. So, I liked the idea that the challenge was never over and it was sort of subjective rather than objective,
Do you remember your first paid, like officially you got a check or cash for a job?
Well, I managed to get in a summer theater company, the Organic Theater in Chicago. And I don't know if I think that was paid. It was almost nothing. But the other job I got was it was a McDonald's film they were making called Trials of a Linebacker, where I sort of played a high school linebacker who was an alcoholic. And I was in it with Aidan Quinn, who's kind of still has a TV show on now. And but that movie never came out. But it was probably my first paycheck of substance,